Have you ever found yourself, completely lost in a book? Or maybe a movie you're reading or watching late into the night, even though you know you've got to be up early.
Oh, that's
You're
right.
exhausted, maybe a little grumpy the next day,
Yeah,
but you just couldn't put it down. It seems so counterproductive, doesn't it?
it really does. But what our research reveals is that this isn't really a failure of willpower at all. An effective story is, well, quite literally an offer your brain just can't refuse.
Can't refuse.
Yeah, it's not really a choice in that moment. It's this profound biological reaction. It's hardwired into us. We're sort of bewitched and affected by stories every minute of every day, whether we realize it or not.
And that deep, almost unconscious pull.
Mm.
That's exactly what we're diving into today. Our mission here is to unpack the true essence of story, moving beyond just, stunning prose or exciting plots.
Yeah.
We really want to explore what truly hooks and holds us. We'll be looking at the brain science, the evolutionary biology behind storytelling. And understanding this can fundamentally transform how you view narratives and maybe even how you create them. We'll be pulling insights from some incredible material, including an expert's perspective on crafting truly riveting novels. Okay, so let's unpack this a bit more. Why? Why is our response to story so deeply ingrained that it can actually override basic needs like, well, sleep? What's really happening in our brains there?
Well, it's far from random. Evolutionary biologists have grappled with this for a long time. Why would humans risk survival by getting so immersed in stories? They concluded there simply had to be a very, very good reason for it.
Okay.
And they found one. When you're under the spell of a compelling story, your brain actually undergoes internal changes right along with the protagonist. Their insights, their struggles, their triumph, they literally become part of your own worldview. This is how stories instill meaning directly into your belief system. Pretty much the same way real life experience does. It's not by telling you what's right, but by allowing you to feel it yourself. As Harvard psychology professor Daniel Gilbert puts it so well, indeed, feelings don't just matter, they are what mattering means.
So it's not just about intellectually understanding something. It's much deeper, a more visceral experience.
Precisely. Our brains actually register affective stories the same way they register things that actually happen to us out here in the real world. Our sources highlight this with a pretty incredible example. People literally balling up to protect their vital organs in a movie theater during a scary scene.
No way.
Yeah. Their brains are instructing their bodies to react as if they were under mortal attack in reality. It's a powerful, totally unconscious response.
That's genuinely mind-blowing, to think our brains react to fiction just like reality. I mean, the implications for how we consume stories, they're huge. So if that's happening, what's the deep evolutionary purpose? Why such a powerful unconscious response?
Well, our brains are wired with what our source calls a cognitive unconscious, that deep, ingrained part of our mind that's constantly scanning for survival cues. We come to every single story hardwired to ask this one question. What am I going to learn here that will help me not only survive, but, prosper?
Prospect.
And this isn't just about physical survival, it's profoundly social too. Our need to belong to a group that's just as biologically driven as our need for food, air, and water.
Huh.
Our big brains evolved to expand our social cognitive skills, basically, to work well with others. Think about it. Even someone as brilliant as, say, Steve Jobs couldn't truly cut it alone. We're all built to be part of a community.
And this is exactly why stories become so vital for us.
Yeah.
And they're essentially these vicarious dress rehearsals,
Exactly.
helping us navigate all those unexpected changes that life is so fond of tossing in our path. This explains why we seek them out. And it also, I guess, reveals where the true power lies for anyone crafting a narrative. Understanding that fundamental human craving is, well, where the keys to the kingdom lie, as the source puts it. Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. If story is so powerful and so deeply hardwired, why do so many writers, struggle to truly connect with an audience? What are the common misconceptions about what makes a narrative truly compelling?
Well, a lot of writers, unfortunately, fall into what our source calls the myth of great writing. They mistake the outward appearance of a story, the stunning prose, the authoritative voice, the intense plot, or a clever structure. They mistake that for its true essence.
Ah, yeah.
And while those elements are important, of course, they often lack the crucial component that gives a story meaning and really brings it to life.
And the research has a pretty vivid example to drive this point home, doesn't it? One that might surprise a lot of people.
It absolutely does. Consider the 50 Shades of Grey trilogy. It sold over 100 million copies.
Right. Controversial, but undeniably huge.
Exactly. And that fact alone forces us to ask, could there be something more compelling out there than beautiful writing? Something that maybe trumps beautiful writing every single time? The insights from our source suggest that, well, when you're truly caught up in a story, it doesn't feel like a story at all. It
Mm.
feels like reality, especially since you're experiencing what's happening to the protagonist along the very same neural pathways you would if it were actually happening to you. In the end, story is the only non-negotiable element. Everything else, as they put it, is gravy.
Just gravy.
Yeah. Learning to write well is valuable, obviously, but only story is essential.
Okay, what about some of the common advice given to aspiring writers? Like just start with the what if question or simply pantsing a story, writing without an outline.
Yeah.
Our sources have some pretty strong opinions on those approaches.
They certainly do. It turns out that a lot of, well, let's call it kindergarten advice, gets what if completely wrong. These neutral what ifs, just big, eventful, unusual things that happen, often lead to, and this is a quote, heartbreakingly storyless manuscripts that agents reject out of hand.
Ouch. Storyless manuscript.
Yeah. A truly story-worthy what if isn't just about an event happening. It has to be tied to something unexpected that throws a monkey wrench into someone's well-laid plans. And crucially, it has to be tied to a specific point you want the story to ultimately make.
And writing without an outline, the pantsing method, often suffers from a similar issue,
Yeah.
right? It lacks context.
Exactly. Creativity needs context. It needs a leash, as the source puts it.
Hmm.
Without a past, a story element like, say, a rose is never just a rose. It only gains meaning from prior events. Without that context, that rose is just a plain old pretty flower, and frankly, who cares about that? The truth is, the story you're telling doesn't start on page 1. It started long, long before you got there. Every novel actually begins in medias res, that Latin phrase meaning in the middle of the thing.
In the middle of things.
Yeah. The novel itself is really the second half of the story, when the plot kicks in. The first half, the part that happened before page 1, establishes where the problem came from and who the protagonist was to begin with.
These insights really help you, the listener, appreciate why some stories absolutely captivate you and others just fall completely flat. And how to identify the true beating heart of any narrative you encounter. It's knowing there's this powerful hidden structure beneath the surface. So if we're not just crafting pretty words or, random events, how do we actually build a truly compelling narrative? It sounds like we need to dig much deeper than we might initially think.
We absolutely do, and it all boils down to the why. Think about how children constantly ask why. They're trying to drill down to core beliefs.
Right, drives parents crazy sometimes.
Exactly. It's like the comedian Louis C.K. in one of his bits with his daughter. Her repeated why questions eventually lead him to blurt out his own fundamental belief. Because we're alone in the universe. That's the kind of depth, that underlying why we're looking for in a story.
And our source has a great example of how this why transforms a potentially mundane plot point into something utterly riveting with the movie Sparrow's Dance.
It's a perfect illustration, yeah. In Sparrow's Dance, you have an agoraphobic actress whose plumbing breaks. Now, on the surface, calling a plumber is about as mundane as it gets, right?
Pretty much.
But because her driving internal goal is human connection, and her clear-cut fear is of the outside world, that broken toilet becomes this incredibly tense and meaningful event. Sparrow's Dance isn't really about how a woman gets her plumbing fixed. It's truly about how she overcomes her deep-seated fear. The external plot is just a catalyst for the internal transformation.
So the protagonist's desire can't be vague, like just wants to be happy. It has to be incredibly specific to have that kind of impact.
Precisely. Wants to be happy is just too generic. It doesn't really mean anything concrete to an audience. Instead, it must be specific. It's real, external, and clear-cut. Our source gives this wonderfully vivid example.
Oh, I remember this one.
Yeah. What would make me happy is if Ronald K. Billingsley, my childhood nemesis, came over and washed my mud-caked car with his tongue in front of the whole town.
You can picture that.
Exactly. You can picture that specific scenario and you instantly understand the why behind it. That's the kind of concrete desire we need.
This why, then, sounds like it really gets at a character's core beliefs, or maybe even their deeply held misbeliefs about the world.
Yeah.
How do we uncover that?
We need to understand their worldview. See, meaning is always subjective. Always. Even when we superficially agree on what things mean, it's often for vastly different reasons. Our source uses this barking dog exercise. Nobody just pictures a highly variable domestic mammal, Canis familiaris.
No, you see a specific dog.
Right. You see your neighbor's annoying dog, or a beloved childhood pet, or maybe even a scary dog from your past. Abstract terms like love, loyalty, hate, or trust, they're completely, totally conceptual until they're tied to specific personal context.
And a protagonist's misbelief is often key to this, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
not just a character flaw, but like a core interpretation of reality that's maybe wrong.
It is. A misbelief is an incredibly powerful driver in a story. They give an example of an ace assassin character named Wanda. Her abandonment issues were far too general to be effective.
Too vague.
Exactly. Until you pinpointed the specific event that triggered her fear of abandonment, and then, crucially, the conclusion she drew about human nature in that exact moment. It's not just what happened, but how she interpreted it and what she came to believe as a result. That's the key.
The case study from Jenny Nash, with her protagonist Ruby, really shines a light on this idea of a misbelief and its origin. Can you tell us about Ruby's defining scene, the one that shaped her?
Absolutely. So Jenny's protagonist, Ruby, has this core misbelief rooted in her fear of loss. She's convinced that the pain of loss she might experience just isn't worth the joy of connection.
Okay.
Her origin scene involves her friend Beth's father, Mr. Anderson. He had genuinely validated Ruby's writing, really believed in her. When he dies suddenly, Ruby is absolutely shattered by his death, but initially, it's for herself, for the loss of his belief in her. She's crying for her own pain.
Interesting distinction.
It is. Then she sees Beth's profound, raw grief over her father, and this chilling thought goes through Ruby's mind. Thank goodness, she thinks, I won't ever have to suffer like that. And that thought, that desperate avoidance of future pain, is what cements her misbelief that love and deep connection only lead to unbearable suffering down the line.
Wow, that's heavy. So it's about connecting these past events to a clear cause and effect chain that leads directly to the story's present. And you're suggesting that to truly understand this chain, a writer should even know the ending, like really early on.
Yes, absolutely. There is always a cause, always an answer to why. A desire, even if it's unmet, it doesn't just vanish into thin air. Instead, it often fuels internal conflict, forming what our source calls a story-specific cause and effect trajectory. The material really emphasizes the need to write these pivotal past scenes, not just summarize them in your notes.
Actually write them out.
Yes, because writing them will give you incredibly potent, specific, and revealing grist for the mill, as they say. It makes it real.
And why is knowing the ending so important up front? It seems kind of counterintuitive for some creative processes, maybe.
Well, writing that aha moment scene, that moment of realization for your protagonist, writing it early on, is truly the most crucial version you'll write. It helps you figure out what absolutely needs to happen between the first page and the last page to make sure your protagonist truly earns that breakthrough. It gives you a target.
Okay, a roadmap.
Exactly. Think of really sage writers like John Irving in A Prayer for Owen Meany or A.S.A. Harrison in The Silent Wife. They often open with a clear vision of where their story is headed, and the only way to do that effectively is to know the ending up front.
So bringing it back to Ruby, how does her aha moment unfold, according to her writer, Jenny? What's that final catalyst look like?
So Ruby's external goal is pretty stark. Write or die. That's her professional pressure. Her internal aha moment is triggered when she's finally forced to stop hiding and connect deeply with someone. In this case, it happens to be a dog owner named Tony.
Okay.
In that moment of connection, she realizes she's made this tragic mistake in how she held herself back from Henry, the man she loved. That realization finally gives her the ability, the courage to put her most vulnerable self onto the page and ultimately give her story, her show, a powerful, authentic ending.
And the final scene description from the source that captures this aha moment.
Yeah.
It's quite memorable. It really brings it all together, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. In that scene, Tony admits he doesn't actually want the dog either, and he offers this rather cynical but profound line. Dogs can't hurt you. Safest love you can have. Ruby looks at the dog, and this rush of realization hits her about Henry. She understands, quoting here, how much I must have hurt him over the years. I never let him get as close as he wanted to be. I always held back a sliver of myself, a reality that seemed suddenly to be the cruelest thing I could have done. And then she whispers, yes, they can. They can hurt you. They always die in the end.
Wow.
Then, in this brilliant twist, she comes up with a plan to return the dog to the pound, but frame it for PR, using a Ransom of Red Chief comparison to prove Tony's point about the dog being a nightmare. It's her breakthrough, her internal shift manifested, but not in the simple, saccharine way you might expect.
This meticulous approach to story development ensures that every single element is interconnected, creating a deeply resonant and believable experience for you, the audience. It's like the layers in a beautifully recorded song, right? where each track is carefully laid down to create a seamless, harmonious whole. Now that sounds like a really complex process, weaving together all these internal and external elements. What role do secondary characters and subplots play in this intricate web? Are they just kind of background noise?
Oh, far from it. Our sources strongly counter the idea that subplots are tangential or just filler. They argue that subplots must spin off the main storyline, telling the reader something they need to know if the plot itself is going to make sense.
Okay, they have to be relevant.
Deeply relevant. Think of classic examples. Boo Radley in Brute, To Kill a Mockingbird, Tom and Myrtle in The Great Gatsby, or Wickham and Lydia in Pride and Prejudice. Without those subplots, the main narrative wouldn't truly exist or certainly wouldn't have the same depth or meaning. They are, in fact, absolutely central to the story working.
So even supporting characters have their own internal drives and agendas. They're not just acting as props for the protagonist.
Absolutely. The source puts it this way. Every single character in your novel fervently believes he or she is the protagonist.
Yeah.
And they each have their own clear, subjective agenda. This is just human nature, right? It's biology in action. However, as the writer, you craft them and their agenda with one overarching purpose in mind to help facilitate the protagonist's story. Everything they do ultimately is geared to have a specific effect on your protagonist, to push them or reveal something about them.
And Jenny's novel, the one with the ruby, really highlights this, doesn't it? With several key secondary characters whose subplots feed directly into Ruby's main story.
Yes, exactly. There's Clementine the fangirl, Henry, who appears mainly through flashbacks, Nora, the veterinarian sister who keeps wanting Ruby to get a dog, Sharon, the producer, and Henry's mother, Frances. For instance, exploring Frances's backstory, how she was abandoned by Henry Sr., how she poured all her love into Henry, and how that made her suspicious of Ruby, that dovetailed with another ongoing subplot, Henry's actual relationship with Ruby.
Ah, I see.
It gave us profound insight into why Henry might have loved Ruby even more because of her independence, even though it frustrated Frances. It truly illustrates how these individual layers of story intertwine to create this complex web that, on the surface, looks solid and all of a piece.
Understanding that every character, every seemingly small detail, contributes to the larger narrative tapestry. It really allows you, the listener, to appreciate the depth and realism of your favorite stories. You start recognizing the careful craft behind what looks like effortless genius. Well, we've really gone on quite a deep dive today, haven't we? Into the biological and artistic underpinnings of compelling storytelling. From understanding why our brains are literally hardwired for narrative, to dissecting the specific components that transform a mere idea into a gripping experience. We've explored how a story is built, layer by intricate layer.
And this isn't just about writing, though, is it? It's really about being a more discerning reader, maybe a more insightful observer of human nature, and perhaps even a more effective communicator in your own life. When you understand the why behind the what, stories become these powerful tools for empathy, for understanding, and even, as we discussed, that kind of vicarious rehearsal for life's inevitable twists and turns.
So as you go about your day, maybe consider just how deeply stories can impact us, how they can even change our core beliefs. Our source mentions To Kill a Mockingbird's role in the civil rights movement, noting that it changed minds by changing how they felt.
That's powerful.
It is. They argue that the only way to truly change how someone thinks about something is to first change how they feel about it. So here's a thought to leave you with. What story will you encounter next that changes how you feel and therefore how you think? Or perhaps, what story will you seek out or even create to help navigate those unexpected changes that life is always so fond of tossing in our path?